It's the festival of Diwali, and people across the country and also across the world are going to be celebrating it with a lot of chirp, with a lot of light. And that's exactly why we also decided to celebrate Diwali in our own unique automotive way. That's the reason why we have lined up for you a slew of machines throughout this episode which have sparkled their way through into our hearts. This is the Diwali special episode of Pit Stop, and I welcome you with the car that you see behind me. It is the Land Rover Defender. This one is the Defender 90, so it is a three-door version. A lot has been said about it, and it is an absolute hoot of a machine. I just don't have words for it because I thought the Jeep Wrangler would come pretty close to this one, but Jeep Wrangler is not as comfortable as the Defender is, and full marks for the air suspension because the amount of torture this thing has been taking for the last about a couple of hours that we've been pounding around this jungle area. It is absolutely phenomenal what the Defender has been able to do. Now, the Defender has some serious off-road kit, expectedly so. It has a lot of modes, and you press a button over here in the center console, then options come up. So you have everything right from the regular eco and road use to comfort, and then you get into the proper off-roady stuff, which is the first one starts with grass, gravel and snow, that kind of application. Then you get into mud and ruts, what we have been using for a lot of the action that we've done. Then you get into the sand mode, which essentially is for desert and those kind of surfaces, loose sand. And then is the rock crawl mode. For that, you also need to activate the low range. So you first have to do that. And then you get into the wade mode. Now, wading is basically, the wading capacity of the Defender is about 900 millimeters, almost 1 meter. And that's a lot of water that it can wade through. And then after that, you can also configure some modes or some settings in the car and drive it the way you really feel comfortable driving. Now, one thing that I absolutely love about the new Defender is its traction control system. It is absolutely phenomenal. It never really lets go completely. It always kind of lingers in the background. But the way it also comes to help you is absolutely amazing. And the way it lets you slide the car despite its heft is superb. And this one, despite of being the Defender 90 version, which is a three-door, and that's why it weighs a little less, it still goes at about 2 tons and a bit. So it's not a light car by any stretch of the imagination. So, does it really have all the credentials to also be a very good car on the road? And in a word, yes. When it comes to the way the suspension behaves, the air suspension, as I said in the beginning as well, is absolutely fantastic. And the pliancy that you get, despite the fact that this car is riding on all-terrain tires, the ride quality is not too bad at all. You do feel a little bit of a vibration through the road because, again, it's largely due to the tires. If we were to fit proper road tires, even those are going to get negated to a great extent. Then the handling. It is not really in the league of, say, the Audi Q5 or the Q7, the BMW X5 or any of those kind of cars. And it does not want to be, and that is a beautiful part of this car. That's the essence of this car. It does not want to fit with the other SUVs. It unashamedly claims to be an off-roader, and it is. It is a brilliant off-roader. It, of course, catches a lot of eyes, and that essentially is what a car like this should do. Make a statement when you're rolling down the road. This one does, and buckets load of it. Quality is great, ride quality is fairly decent. does not really drive enthusiastically, but this is not an X5. This is a completely different product, and you should be proud about owning such a product, which is going to take you to the end of the world. So, a massive smile-forming car. Unfortunately, not attainable for a lot of people, but then again, the kind of machine that you get when you pay that amount, you would want to use it properly, but not a lot of you will. In the space of small, entertaining hatchbacks, the Volkswagen Polo was always the default option for all the enthusiasts. But Hyundai changed that with the introduction of the latest generation of the i20, and specifically the i20 N line just enhanced that appeal of performance that much more for everyone looking at a car that really was very involving to drive this side of 15 lakh rupees. This is a small car which gives you a sense of connection that was missing in a lot of other cars. Only the Polo and probably to a certain extent the Baleno RS offered that, but Baleno is not there and Polo is getting too long in the tooth. So the Hyundai i20 N line, though it is not a full-blown N model, is still something that can genuinely plaster a good smile on your face. This is the Hyundai i20 N line. The i20 N line has separated itself from the i20 in a very defined manner. A couple of things are very, very crucial over here to note. The power output remains the same, so it's the same 120 bhp odd that you get from the engine, but the way things are from the dynamic perspective are very different. But I'll come to that later, because a lot of buyers buy such kind of a product for the visual appeal. And the one thing that I really like is the fact that it has proper, discreet also at the same time, but very proper, very nicely highlighted red accents. In fact, when you see the i20 coming towards you, that red accent at the bumper or right at the bottom of the bumper really makes it look like it's even more hunkered down, it's even more pointier. I'm still not a very big fan of the chrome strip that runs at the back. The wheels are phenomenal, and that chrome really stands out. It just does not kind of gel with the overall aesthetic of the car. To set the cabin of the i20 N line apart from the stock i20, which is also very dark inside, are these red accents. So you get the red accents in the seats, the control knobs, the door panels, and thankfully it's not overdone and it's a sporty enough feeling inside. You get decent space in the front. The seats are very, very good. They hold you properly in place. The material that they have for the upholstery is also superb. But there might be a little bit of a translation of the road into the cabin, because the suspension is definitely stiffened up. The damping is 30% stiffer than the stock i20, and you also feel a lot more heft in the steering wheel. The servo probably is retuned to give you a more direct feel and a little bit more confidence inspiring as well when you're piloting it. When you get into the buying mode for an i20 N line or any such performance product, you know that there are going to be compromises that you will make, and that is exactly what you want and you live with. And it's not such a bad thing, because even when you're going about at regular speeds, the suspension is not too bad, come to think of it. It's only when you really start gunning it and you encounter some expansion joints or some very scratchy surfaces that you do feel that 30% stiffness in the suspension. I'm not saying that at slow speeds you can't feel the stiffness, you definitely can, but it's not something that is going to be a deal breaker for you. You get everything right from Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, which has become very, very regular items now, to wireless charging, to every other connected car feature. All these kind of things are there. Plus, there is a good amount of safety net as well, active and passive. You have airbags and all the electronic aids. So that is also done very nicely, as is expected by Hyundai. we get now disc brakes on all four wheels. There is a good amount of progression, good amount of feel from the pedal as well. And you get that bite point, the strong bite point exactly where you want. The highlight or the real essence of the N-Line hides in the way it turns. When you rush through some nice, fast flowing bends, you feel that the load transfer on the suspension is very, very smart, very accurate, and the car really doesn't buckle at all. So it's very immediate as well because the front end is very communicative and it gives you all the feedback that you want and then some. The steering system, as I said, is very responsive. All that coupled to some very decent tires makes it a very rewarding experience. Out of the 5 products that we have shortlisted for you in this special episode, 2 are motorcycles and both of them are legit legends. The first one, which is going to come up very shortly, is all Indian. So I'm pretty sure you would have guessed which brand it is. It is, of course, Royal Enfield, and the bike is the new Classic 350. Now, over the years, Classic has always enchanted people with its characteristic thump, with its beautifully masculine silhouette. And the new one does not disappoint at all because it builds on that tradition and it builds on that culture while also having a very acute view of what the brand should be for the future. So everything that the tradition has had for Royal Enfield and also looking at what really the brand should be for the globe as we go forwards. This is the Classic 350 by Royal Enfield. The iconic design has been kept intact and it looks like the same old Classic 350 even when you view it up close. But the most noticeable change that we felt is the replacement of the spring-suspended rider seat with a new, better one. But those who still want the spring-loaded seat will not be disappointed as Royal Enfield is offering one as an accessory. You feel more confident thanks to the revised chassis. The previous Classic 350 was based on a single down-tube frame, while the new one gets a double cradle frame which increases the rigidity to a significant level. And not just that, the suspension setup is entirely new and balanced for different riding conditions. We felt a positive change in the ride quality and handling while riding the new Classic, and that was mostly because of the front end, which now feels much more confident with the fatter 41mm fork. The rear, on the other hand, has been tuned for a plusher ride. The travel has been increased and the new Classic 350 has a better ground clearance. It has gone up by 35mm. Both the changes are going to help you on broken tarmac and some mild off-road terrains as well. The damping is also better than before and it gets preload adjustability in 6 predefined steps. Now coming to the highlight of the 2021 Royal Enfield Classic 350, the all-new 350cc engine, which we also experienced in the Meteor. It remains a single-cylinder air-cooled unit like before, but the internals are completely revised and it gains an oil cooler as well. The motor delivers 20.2 horsepower and 27 Nm of torque, which is almost similar to the previous generation model. But a shorter stroke and increased compression ratio help the engine to deliver the maximum power earlier in the rev range. It results in faster acceleration and the vibrations are better contained, thanks to the changes done to the engine as well as the new frame, which maintains a smooth ride even till 5,000 RPM. You can easily ride the Classic 350 between 80 to 100 km per hour in 5th gear without experiencing any harshness. The exhaust system has also been changed completely and the Classic fans will be glad to know that it does not sound like the Meteor. It is louder and the pea-shooter design of the pipe makes it sound quite similar to the authentic Classic, but you definitely can feel the refinement in the new thump. Royal Enfield has also worked on the 5-speed gearbox and it perfectly suits the nature of the all-new engine. Gearing is tall and the shifts are slick. There are some tech additions as well. The newly designed speedometer remains an analog dial, but below that you get an MID screen that offers a host of information just with a click of a button on the handlebar. There is a small TFT screen as well on its right side, which is borrowed from the Meteor, like the new rotary style switchgear. There is an app-based turn-by-turn navigation system. It works fine, but the app on the phone consumes a lot of juice from the battery. The issue remains the same, and we hope that Royal Enfield will fix the battery optimization as soon as possible. With all these feature updates and changes to the engine and chassis, the new Classic 350 has definitely raised the bar in comparison to the previous generation model. Even the build quality is better, and it offers improved handling and performance, and most importantly, an enhanced riding experience overall. The next one needs no elaborate chat, so I'm going to leave you with visuals of this legend, this icon with a cult following, this granddaddy of motorcycling performance in a new suit. This is the Suzuki Hayabusa. The third generation, technically the third generation Hayabusa that I'm sitting on in 2021. This has not really changed all that much in terms of its platform. The chassis is largely similar. The subframe is exactly the same. What has kind of changed in terms of the architecture is the way the seat is planted. The rail has changed, and also the padding of the seat is much nicer. You feel like it's nice and cushy. But the biggest change that I felt in comparison to the original model, the riding position seems very different. I think I'm more tucked in. It's a lot more organic, which is extremely pleasing, and it also gives you a lot more confidence, because then when you tuck down, the screen is really going over, and the efficiency against the air is really, really nice. As I said, the architecture of the Busa is largely similar to the older one. What has changed is the basket of electronics that it comes with now. The highlight is the 6-axis IMU, and that talks to the central computer, and then there's a witchcraft of technological and electronic interference, or rather adjustments that you get as well. There is traction control, and you have 10 levels to choose from. And then there is also a 10-level anti-wheelie. And yeah, I think with all the power selector modes that you have and all the other trickery that is going on, it is a big, big change from what the previous generation of the Busa was. You get launch control with 3 levels to adjust your rev limit at, so you can be very confident and just dump the throttle if you are in the mood, and it's going to kind of manage you at the level that you set it at. And it also has rear wheel lift control, so even if you go very hard on the anchors, it is not really going to allow the rear wheel to go up and make you nervous. So all very, very good. Now the engine. They have obviously not increased the engine size, so to meet the Euro 5 regulations, they have had to compromise on outright power and torque figures, which does not mean that the Hayabusa is slow by any measure. That will be absolutely ridiculous if you think that it has reduced a little bit in personality or character. That's not the case. And yeah, I think the way the engine goes, it doesn't go, it just erupts. But the big question is, does it have that quintessential Hayabusa feel? And no denying the fact, it still does. It still feels like it's a big falcon of a motorcycle, which Hayabusa essentially means. It is about the very machine that grew out of motorcycling passion and the keenness to feel the wind, the freedom, the joy of life. It is still not as ferocious as, say, the ZZR 1400, but now you don't have the 14R, and you also don't have the H2S. So the Hayabusa is kind of in a space of its own, and that is exactly what really gives it that much more potential to do good in the market. And that is the reason why the prices have also gone up substantially. But to me, a guy who's been passionate about the Busa and not really its ideal customer, this was always a teleportation device. And I'm very, very glad that it still is a teleportation device. When it comes to Tata Motors, emotions run very high and people are generally extremely sentimental about this brand. When it comes to their products, they would fight you relentlessly in proving that the products are flawless and nothing is wrong with them. But truth be told, the products have been underwhelming for a very long time. Right from the initial days of the Indica to the more recent products like the Safari or the Harrier. But then Tata gave us the punch and that really changed their perception in a big way, not only from a global crash test safety perspective, but also from the general engineering sense that you get from the punch. That is something that we never really felt in an older Tata car. So that's exactly why it features on our list, because it is so surprising. And it is not just a good Tata car, it is a good car, period. Ever since Tata had that major design overhaul across the products, it has been doing phenomenally well, at least in terms of establishing itself in the minds of the consumers. It all started with the Nexon, then you had the Altroz, and also the Harrier and the Safari Duo. Same platform, different cars. And now that envelope is being pushed with the Punch that you see here with me. It is a smallish sort of a crossover, smaller than even the Nexon. And this is a segment that has not really had a lot of great cars and great designs. But this one aims to change all that. And in terms of just looks, it absolutely is on point and better than everything else in the segment. Where it scores is the way the interior has been packaged and the kind of space that you get, the kind of comfort that you get. We have been very, very impressed. When you talk about the quality, that is in fact something that we all have been very impressed by, because the strength of the plastics is absolutely solid. The cabin, the front part is characterized by the screen that you see in the middle. This one is of course the top end variant. So you have a touchscreen infotainment system, 7 inches, and it gives you everything almost that car of this segment should. So you have Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, and Tata has spent a lot of time and also invested a lot of thought on safety. So you get ABS, EBD, you have cornering brake control as well, and dual airbags are standard, of course. So in terms of robustness and the safety element, it just gives you that sense of confidence, that sense of peace of mind, and it's extremely well insulated from the noise outside. There is a little bit of a drone from the gearbox that you can hear, but that's not too bad. What we are driving is the AMT variant. Now the engine is of course the same across all variants, so it's a 1.2 litre petrol engine, non-turbo. You may feel that slight bit of lag or the pull back from the engine a little, because it kind of acts exactly like a manual should. So when you shift through the gears manually and you press the clutch, there is that slight bit of a delay going from one gear to the other. It's exactly like that, but because you're not shifting it, you feel it that much more. Very nicely planted car when it comes to the chassis balance. On the regular road surfaces and some flowing bends that we've encountered, it tracks the line of the corner in a very confident way. And another thing which is worth talking about is the steering. The response is not bad. The initial turn-in is pretty good and it kind of stays on its course. It doesn't really give you any vague feeling. The suspension has been possibly the highlight of the car, and I did not expect that, because generally in a small car, when you talk about hatchbacks or even crossovers that we have seen in the past, suspension kind of feels like it's been compromised on. But here the damping is very nice, confident. It's also got that silent absorption that not a lot of cars of this segment can boast of. So it does not really sound like it's working overtime, and it doesn't sound rude at all. The Tata Punch goes between 5.5 lakh and 10 lakh rupees, and in that price bracket, it fights against a big range of vehicles. the Renault Kiger and Nissan Magnite at one end, and the premium hatchbacks at the other, and everything in between as well. And yet, it still has that unique space for itself, which is extremely commendable. With that, we wrap this celebratory special episode. Thank you very much for watching. If you want to connect with us, just go on any of these social media pages and drop in a line to us. Before going, as always, I urge you to be very responsible whenever you're on the road, be it on feet or on wheels. My name is Ashish, signing off. I wish you all a very happy Diwali. Take care. Bye-bye.